Hi guys, I am here to present to you on the genetic disorder phenylketonuria, which is also short for PKU. Okay. All right, so to describe this condition, what happens is you have a phenylalanine hydroxylase deficiency in your system. When you have this deficiency, you cannot tolerate the intake of phenylalanine. The foods that do have high amounts of phenylalanine in them are high protein foods such as meat, fish, chicken, eggs, beans, things like that, dairy. So the discovery of phenylketonuria occurred back in Norway in 1934 by the physician Dr. Falling. There were several mentally retarded children in the community, and they were unsure what was happening. So what they did is they analyzed the urine of these children and found that they had phenyl pyruvic acid in their urine. And that is kind of how the disease came to be. And it was also the first kind of disorder of an issue or error in the metabolism, which actually affects the mind, as the main effect of phenylketonuria is mental retardation. In 1953, it was shown that this particular enzyme, phenylalanine hydroxylase, was responsible for converting phenylalanine to tyrosine. Again, if you don't have that enzyme, you cannot convert phenylalanine to tyrosine, and therefore you have greater accumulation of phenylalanine in the blood, which will damage your brain and cause mental retardation. So in 1963, the microbiologist Dr. Guthrie, he developed a fairly quick and inexpensive tool for checking this disease in newborns. And this kind of allowed a large number, mass number of infants born in the developed world to receive this test, and it involved a heel prick, and then looking at the blood and, looking for the buildup of that phenylalanine in the blood. It's still mandated today, and we'll go over that in a little bit in some more detail. So the clinical characteristics of this genetic disorder ranges from mild to severe, depending on how much of that phenylalanine you do have in your blood. However, the bottom line is that these children will develop permanent intellectual disabilities. And this phenylalanine builds up in the bloodstream and affects the brain. And so when things affect the brain, you're going to have issues such as seizures, behavioral problems, delayed development, and then also psychiatric disorders, unfortunately. Strangely, these individuals with PKU do have kind of a musty odor to them, and that is due to the excess buildup of phenylalanine in the blood. Decreased skin and hair pigmentation is seen in these individuals as well, and also the skin condition of eczema is commonly seen. Again, basically, this disease is really prevalent on a brain MRI, and it's seen in about 90% of individuals with PKU. Basically, PKU will affect the myelin formation, and that is going to be really evident within the white matter of the brain. To be diagnosed with PKU, the elevated plasma phenylalanine level should be greater than 2 milligrams per deciliter. And you are going to also notice that the phenylalanine levels are greater than your tyrosine levels, and the ratio is about greater than 3. So, what gene is responsible for this? It's actually going to be your 12th chromosome, and there's going to be mutation within the PAH gene, and that is the gene that does make the enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase, which will break down phenylalanine to tyrosine. So if that gene is not working, you're not breaking down phenylalanine, thus contributing to the buildup. The mode of inheritance for this disease, it does follow an autosomal recessive pattern, which will typically show, and will typically skip generations. And that is because even though an individual can be affected, their parents typically do not show any signs or symptoms of the condition because they are carriers, they're heterozygous for the condition. To be affected, you need to have 2 recessive alleles, so you need to be homozygous recessive for the condition. So you're going to be receiving that small a from each parent, and that's why each parent has to be a carrier for you to be affected. So this is going to be a pedigree of the recessive inheritance pattern. As you can see, in the first generation, you have 2 individuals, you have a male and a female. The female here is affected. The male is not affected. So if you look at the entirety of the second generation, you see that none of these offspring are affected, which is very interesting. So all of these offspring from the parents of the second generation are carriers. So they have a big R, small r, for example. And they're going to be carriers because, as you can see, for example, the 2 individuals in the second generation, number 3 and number 4, they have offspring. They're going to have several children. In the third generation, 3, 4, and 6. And in the third generation, number 4, the female is affected. And this female is going to be receiving that small a from both generation 2, 3, and generation 2, 4 parents. So how prevalent is this disease in the world? It's extensive. The incidence in the US is 1 out of 1,500 births. It's about 1 in 10,000 within Europe. Some countries do have a higher rate. So Italy, Ireland, and Turkey, with Turkey having a especially high rate with an occurrence of 1 in 4,000 live births. Interestingly, if you are of African or Finnish or Japanese descent, the risk is fairly low. So what are your options as far as testing and to see if you are a carrier or if you're unaffected or whatnot of PKU? Again, PKU is mandated in 48 states within the US. Wyoming and Maryland are the 2 states where you do need written parental consent to actually perform these newborn tests. But all the other states, it is kind of a default test that they'll do on the newborn, and they're going to do a heel prick, as I mentioned before, and they're going to analyze that blood for phenylalanine levels. You can also do molecular genetic testing where you're going to look for those mutations within the PAH gene on the 12th chromosome. You can either do a single genetic test to find that, or you can do a multi-gene test if you're especially interested in looking for other conditions that you may have or carry. So these tests are going to include like a sequence analysis or like a gene-targeted deletion or duplication analysis. All right, so that is kind of the quick kind of version of PKU, and here are my references. Thank you so much for listening. Bye, guys.